They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but mine came with a corporate takeover and the shocked expression on my husband's face as he realized the true cost of his betrayal. When Ethan brought his pregnant mistress, wearing the emerald necklace meant to be my anniversary gift, to our celebratory dinner, he thought he was orchestrating my humiliation before walking away with his company, his new family, and my dignity. What he never discovered in our 12 years of marriage was that beneath my carefully crafted persona as the perfect corporate wife lay the financial genius who actually owned Meridian Technologies, the empire he'd proudly claimed as his own creation. As he casually informed me of our impending divorce with his hand resting possessively on his assistant's swollen belly, I smiled, knowing that tomorrow would begin the systematic dismantling of everything he held dear, starting with the revelation that would shatter his most precious illusion. He had never been the brilliant, self-made man he pretended to be. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The reservation at Elysium had been made months in advance. As Boston's most exclusive restaurant, with its panoramic views of the harbor and 3 Michelin stars, getting a table typically required connections or extraordinary patience. But this was our 12th anniversary, and my husband Ethan had insisted on making it special. 12 years deserves something spectacular, he'd said, kissing my forehead absently while scrolling through emails on his phone. I'd spent the day at Laurent's salon, getting the works, hair, nails, the subtle makeup that Ethan preferred. Natural beauty enhanced, not masked, he would say, as though it were a compliment rather than another subtle form of control. The black dress I'd chosen was new, elegant, but not flashy, just revealing enough to remind my increasingly distant husband what he had at home. 12 years of marriage to the CEO of Meridian Technologies had taught me many things. How to host immaculate dinner parties for clients. How to make polite conversation with venture capitalists' wives. How to ignore the lingering glances from Ethan's younger colleagues. And most importantly, how to maintain the perfect facade of the successful power couple. What Ethan didn't know, what he had never bothered to ask, was that before I became Mrs. Ethan Caldwell, I had been Alexandra Reed, financial prodigy and the secret angel investor behind Meridian's initial funding rounds. My investment had been made through layers of LLCs and holding companies, a complicated structure that kept my name hidden from all company documents. It had been my choice to remain anonymous, to watch from the shadows as Ethan built the company, with my capital. Back then, it had been a testament to my faith in him, both as an entrepreneur and as my future husband. I waited at the table, a flute of champagne untouched before me, watching the door. Ethan was 17 minutes late, not unusual for a man who considered his time more valuable than anyone else's. The maitre d' approached with 2 people, and I felt my practiced smile freeze on my face. Ethan was not alone. She was beautiful in that effortless way that requires tremendous effort. Golden hair cascading past her shoulders, a green dress that matched both her eyes and the emerald pendant gleaming at her throat, the pendant I'd seen on our shared credit card statement last month. The pendant Ethan had called my anniversary surprise, but the real surprise was the gentle swell of her belly, the protective way her hand rested there as Ethan guided her to our table with a hand on the small of her back, the same gesture he'd used with me countless times. "Alexandra," Ethan said, his voice carrying the practiced confidence that had charmed investors and employees for years. "I'd like you to meet Olivia." I felt a curious detachment, as though I were observing the scene from above. The elegant restaurant with its soft lighting and spectacular views. The other diners, oblivious to the drama unfolding at table 19. My husband, handsome in his tailored suit, his dark hair showing distinguished streaks of silver at the temples. The beautiful blonde with my anniversary present around her neck, and my husband's child growing inside her, And me, still holding my untouched champagne, wedding ring catching the light. Olivia, I repeated, my voice steadier than I felt. What a surprise. Ethan pulled out a chair for her. Not for me. That courtesy had long since disappeared. And sat between us, apparently oblivious to the absolute insanity of the situation he'd created. I thought it was time you two met, he said, reaching for the wine list. Olivia has become an important part of my life. Olivia had the decency to look uncomfortable, her eyes darting between Ethan and me. I told him this wasn't the way, she said softly. No? I asked, finally taking a sip of my champagne. It tasted like nothing. Was there a better way to introduce your pregnant mistress to your wife on your anniversary? Ethan's jaw tightened, the first sign of his legendary temper, the one his employees feared but his wife knew intimately. Alexandra, don't make a scene. This isn't how I wanted this to go. And yet here we are, I said, placing my glass down carefully. On our anniversary, with your pregnant... I gestured toward Olivia, who flinched. Executive assistant, Ethan supplied, as though her job title somehow made the situation less appalling. Of course, Olivia Palmer. I'd seen the name on company documents, authorized her expense reports, noted her rapid promotion from receptionist to Ethan's personal assistant in a matter of months. I should have known then. I see, I said, folding my napkin and placing it beside my plate. And the emerald necklace? Was that a signing bonus for her executive position, or a perk for additional services rendered? Olivia's hand flew to her throat, fingers touching the pendant. Ethan's face darkened. I think you should know, he said, leaning forward, lowering his voice to ensure our drama wouldn't entertain the neighboring tables, that I've already spoken to Jackson about the divorce. Jackson Ellis, our lawyer, or rather Ethan's lawyer, a fact that would become important very soon. How thoughtful of you to handle the details, I replied, reaching for my purse. I assume you've already decided what you're prepared to offer me? A flicker of relief crossed Ethan's face, misreading my calm for resignation. You'll be taken care of, Alexandra. The penthouse, a generous settlement. I'm not a monster. I had to suppress a laugh at that. Not a monster. Just a man who brought his pregnant mistress to his anniversary dinner, who wore the watch I'd given him 5 anniversaries ago, while sitting beside the woman who wore what should have been my present. Not a monster, just breathtakingly cruel. How generous, I said, standing. But I think I'll pass on dinner. I've suddenly lost my appetite. Ethan looked irritated but relieved. This was going better than he'd expected. The public confrontation would be minimal, the mess contained. Alexandra, ever proper, wouldn't cause a scene. We'll talk tomorrow, he said, already turning his attention to Olivia, who still looked miserable. At least one of them had a conscience. I paused before leaving, fixing my gaze on Ethan. Enjoy your evening, I said. And Olivia? That necklace brings out your eyes beautifully. A much better choice than the ruby he gave his last assistant. I saw the shock register on both their faces as I turned and walked calmly through the restaurant, nodding politely to the maitre d', who looked concerned but knew better than to intervene in the private affairs of the wealthy. Outside, the October air was crisp, carrying the scent of the harbor. I took a deep breath, then another, letting the reality of the situation settle into my bones. 12 years of marriage. Over. Not gradually, not with the slow fading of love or the mutual recognition of growing apart, but with deliberate cruelty, with public humiliation. My Uber arrived, and I slid into the back seat, giving the driver the address of our penthouse overlooking the public garden. As the city lights blurred past the window, I felt the first shards of ice forming around my heart. The numbness was, welcome, holding the pain at bay. The penthouse was dark when I arrived, the silence oppressive. I kicked off my heels in the marble entryway, making my way to the kitchen where I poured a generous glass of the Macallan, 25 Ethan saved for special occasions. This certainly qualified. Sinking onto one of the Italian leather couches, I stared at the glittering cityscape beyond our floor-to-ceiling windows. 12 years. 12 years of playing the perfect corporate wife while secretly being the financial backbone of Ethan's success. It had started innocently enough. We'd met at Harvard Business School, where I was already making a name for myself with a knack for identifying undervalued tech companies. Ethan had charm, vision, and boundless ambition, but limited capital and connections. I had inherited wealth, financial acumen, and an extensive network thanks to my family's position in Boston society. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. When Ethan pitched me his idea for Meridian Technologies, I saw the potential immediately. But I also saw something else. I saw how much he needed to be the success story, how his ego required him to be seen as the self-made man. So I made him a proposal. I would provide the seed funding anonymously, using a complex structure of holding companies that couldn't be traced back to me. He would be the face of Meridian, the visionary founder, while I would play the supportive wife. It had seemed romantic at the time, my secret gift to him. And for years it worked. Meridian grew. Ethan flourished in the spotlight, and I enjoyed watching his success, knowing I had been instrumental in creating it. The arrangement suited us both. He got the adoration he craved, and I avoided the scrutiny that came with being a female investor in the still very male tech world. But something had shifted in recent years. As Meridian expanded and Ethan's star rose, he began to believe his own press. The narrative he created, of the brilliant founder who built an empire through sheer force of will, became his reality. I became less his partner and more his accessory, the elegant wife who enhanced his image but whose opinions held less and less weight. And now this, the final insult. Not just an affair, but a pregnancy. Not just betrayal, but humiliation. I took another sip of scotch, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Staying at the Four Seasons tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." Of course he was. Probably in the presidential suite, celebrating the successful dissolution of his marriage with champagne and his pregnant mistress. How convenient for him that he had already arranged a comfortable exit strategy while blindsiding me. But Ethan had made one critical miscalculation. He had forgotten, or perhaps had never truly understood, exactly who he had married. I opened my laptop and entered the series of passwords that protected my most private files. Documents appeared on the screen. The original funding structures for Meridian Technologies, the holding companies, the silent ownership arrangements that gave me controlling interest in the company Ethan believed was entirely his. At the time of Meridian's founding, Ethan had been so focused on his vision, so eager for the capital, that he had signed the paperwork without scrutinizing the finer details. Over the years, as subsequent funding rounds diluted most early investors, my position had been carefully protected through preferential share structures and voting rights agreements buried in legal language Ethan had never bothered to fully understand. In his mind, I was just his wife, the woman who organized his social calendar and hosted dinner parties for his investors. He had no idea that in the boardroom of Meridian Technologies, I held more power than he did. I had simply never chosen to exercise it, until now. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in months. Diana Chen, my former Harvard classmate and now one of the most formidable corporate attorneys in Boston. "Alexandra," Diana answered on the second ring, her voice sharp even at this late hour. "To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" "I need your counsel," I said simply. "Are you free for breakfast tomorrow?" A brief pause. Diana and I knew each other well enough that she immediately understood something significant was happening. "The Bristol at 8, she suggested, naming the private dining room at the Four Seasons, ironically, the same hotel where Ethan was currently staying with Olivia. "Perfect," I replied. "And Diana, I'll need your absolute discretion." "Always," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Diana loved nothing more than a complex legal challenge shrouded in secrecy. After ending the call, I moved through the penthouse with purposeful steps, entering Ethan's home office. Unlike his minimalist workspace at Meridian headquarters, his home office was designed to impress, with leather-bound books he'd never read and art he couldn't interpret but had been assured was valuable. I sat at his desk and woke his computer. Like most arrogant men, Ethan's passwords were embarrassingly predictable. His birth year followed by his university. The screen came to life, revealing dozens of open tabs. Real estate listings in Cambridge, nearby to Meridian's headquarters. Email exchanges with Jackson Ellis regarding divorce strategy. A draft press release about his personal transition that carefully painted him as devoted to his new family, while implying the dissolution of our marriage was mutual and amicable. It was all so calculated, so thoroughly planned. This wasn't an impulsive affair that had resulted in unexpected consequences. This was a complete life restructuring, meticulously organized while I remained oblivious. Or so he thought. I forwarded the relevant emails to myself, then continued my exploration. In his personal cloud storage, I found more evidence of his duplicity. Photos of him and Olivia dating back nearly 2 years, financial projections that included reduced alimony payments to me over time, even a document titled AC Settlement. Strategy that outlined in cold detail how he planned to minimize my share of his company. I felt cold anger crystallize within me. For 12 years, I had stood in Ethan's shadow, letting him believe the spotlight was his natural habitat rather than a position I had helped create for him. I had diminished myself to enhance him, hiding my financial acumen behind the facade of the perfect corporate wife. No more. I reached for my phone again, this time calling Robert Keene, the chairman of Meridian's board of directors and an old family friend who had never quite approved of Ethan, but had kept his counsel out of respect for me. "Alexandra?" he answered, surprise evident in his voice. "Is everything all right? It's rather late." "I apologize for the hour, Robert," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "But I need to request an emergency board meeting tomorrow. Afternoon, 3 o'clock if that can be arranged." There was a long pause. In the 12 years since Meridian's founding, I had never once requested a board meeting or exerted any influence over the company's governance. "May I ask what this concerns?" Robert asked cautiously. "A significant change in leadership," I replied. "And Robert? Please ensure Ethan receives no advance notice. This is a matter of some delicacy." Another pause, longer this time. Robert was no fool. He understood immediately that something momentous was occurring. "I'll make the arrangements," he said finally. 3 o'clock, the main boardroom. "Thank you," I said, ending the call before he could ask further questions. I leaned back in Ethan's chair, surveying the office that so perfectly encapsulated his carefully cultivated image. The Harvard diploma prominently displayed, the Forbes cover featuring him as Tech's next visionary. The model sailboat, suggesting a man who had leisure interests beyond his work, though Ethan hadn't been on a boat in years. It was all a facade, a construction designed to project success and authority. But facades can be dismantled, and tomorrow, Ethan Caldwell's carefully constructed world would begin to crumble. I closed his laptop and stood, suddenly aware of how exhausted I felt. The adrenaline that had carried me through the restaurant confrontation was waning, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. But beneath the fatigue, a new sensation was emerging, a cold, clarifying anger that brought with it a strange sense of liberation. For 12 years, I had played a role, subordinating my own ambitions and identity to Ethan's outsized ego. Tomorrow, Alexandra Caldwell would step out of the shadows and reclaim her power, and Ethan would learn the true cost of his betrayal. Indai. Our bedroom, I methodically removed my anniversary dress and jewelry, placing them in the donation pile I would arrange to have collected tomorrow. I would keep nothing from this night, nothing to remind me of the moment my marriage ended with calculated cruelty. As I slipped between the Egyptian cotton sheets Ethan had insisted were the only acceptable option for a man of his stature, I felt oddly at peace. The path ahead was clear now, illuminated by the harsh light of betrayal, but also by the knowledge of my own strength. Ethan had always underestimated me. Tomorrow, he will finally understand the magnitude of his mistake. Morning arrived with painful clarity, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows I had once found so impressive. I'd slept surprisingly well, as though my body recognized the need for strength in the coming battle. The bed felt enormous without Ethan beside me, a preview of my future, though not in the way he intended. I dressed with deliberate care, a charcoal Armani suit I'd purchased myself rather than one of the designer outfits Ethan had selected to showcase his successful wife. Pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother, a self-made woman who'd built a real estate empire in a time when women were expected to build families, not businesses. No wedding ring. That felt important, a physical acknowledgement of what had happened last night. The Bristol room at the Four Seasons was nearly empty at 7:45 a.m., just as I preferred. I selected a corner table with a view of both entrances, a habit from my investment banking days. Always position yourself to see who's coming. Diana arrives precisely at 8 elegant in a navy pantsuit that signaled business rather than breakfast. Her quick, assessing glance told me she'd already guessed something significant had happened. "You look different," she said as a way of greeting. "Different how?" I asked, pouring her coffee from the silver pot the waiter had left. "Like Alexandra Reed again, not Alexandra Caldwell." She stirred her coffee with precision. "It's been a while since I've seen that woman." I smiled faintly. Diana had never approved of how I'd stepped into Ethan's shadow, though she'd respected my choice. "Ethan brought his pregnant mistress to our anniversary dinner last night," I said without preamble. "He's already spoken to Jackson about divorce proceedings." Diana's spoon paused momentarily, the only indication of her surprise. "I see. That's—" She searched for an appropriate word. "Efficient?" I supplied. "Ethan has always valued efficiency." I was going to say unconscionably cruel, but efficiency works too. She set her spoon down. "I assume we're not here to cry into our eggs, Benedict." I slid a USB drive across the table. "This contains the original funding documents for Meridian Technologies, the holding company structures, the preferential voting rights, everything." Diana picked up the drive, her expression shifting from sympathetic friend to razor-sharp attorney. "He doesn't know." It wasn't a question. Ethan believes he built Meridian from nothing. He's never looked closely at the ownership structure or questioned why certain investors have remained anonymous. His ego wouldn't allow for the possibility that someone else, especially his wife, might be the financial genius behind his success. And you're ready to correct that misapprehension. I've called an emergency board meeting for 3 this afternoon. Diana's eyebrows rose. "That's aggressive timing." Ethan is aggressive in his approach to business. I learned from watching him. The waiter appeared with our food, and we fell silent as he arranged the plates. When he retreated, Diana leaned forward. "Alexandra, I need to understand your objective. Here. What do you want out of this?" I considered the question, cutting my avocado toast into precise triangles. Justice seems too simplistic. Revenge is too emotional. "Both are valid responses to betrayal," Diana noted. What I want, I said, carefully, is for Ethan to understand the consequences of his actions. He planned my humiliation meticulously, the public setting, the pregnant mistress wearing what should have been my anniversary gift, the carefully timed revelation about divorce proceedings. He choreographed my devastation like a theatrical production. And now you'll choreograph his, Diana concluded. With precision, I agreed. I want Meridian, not just my share, all of it. I want the board to remove him as CEO. I want him to understand that everything he believes about himself, the brilliant founder, the visionary leader, the self-made success, is a narrative I allowed him to believe. Diana nodded slowly, taking a sip of her coffee. The documents will support your position as majority shareholder, but removing him as CEO will require board support. Do you have it? Robert Keene has never been Ethan's biggest fan. Justine Miles and Terrence Washington have expressed concerns about his management style in recent board meetings. Philip Blackwell will follow Robert's lead. I ticked off the board members one by one. That leaves Samuel Chen, who's currently negotiating a significant contract with Meridian for his shipping company. You'll need to neutralize that incentive, Diana observed. Already handled. I spoke with Samuel's wife, Margaret, last night after you and I talked. Their daughter is applying to Princeton next year. I've arranged for my father to make a call to the dean of admissions, who was his roommate at Yale. Diana's lips curved in appreciation. You've been busy. I haven't slept much, I admitted. There's more. I need to file for divorce immediately, before Ethan's paperwork hits the system. I want temporary injunctions against any transfer of Meridian stock or assets. And I need a forensic accountant to go through Ethan's personal finances. I have reason to believe he's been using company funds inappropriately. Diana pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. I'm sending you my divorce team's contact information now. Claire Patterson handles the emotional components beautifully, while Michael Reeves is absolutely ruthless on financial discovery. As for the accountant, she made another note. Jonathan Wells is the best in Boston, discreet, thorough, and unintimidated by powerful men. Perfect. What about the mistress? Diana asked, meeting my eyes directly. Olivia, is it? Executive Assistant Olivia Palmer, 27, with Meridian for 18 months, with Ethan for longer than that, apparently. And pregnant, Diana added delicately. I set down my fork. I have no quarrel with Olivia. She's not the first assistant Ethan has pursued, though she's the first to get pregnant. I suspect she's as much a victim of his manipulations as I am, in her own way. Generous of you. Practical, I corrected. My issue is with Ethan, not with the women he's used. Besides, she looked genuinely uncomfortable last night. I doubt his little dinner theater was her idea. Diana nodded thoughtfully. Still, we should investigate her employment history, any promotions or bonuses she's received since their relationship began. Not to punish her, but to establish a pattern of Ethan using company resources for personal benefit. Good point. Now, Diana continued, switching effortlessly into full legal mode, I need you to walk me through exactly what happened at the restaurant last night. Every detail, every word exchanged. Then we'll go through what evidence you've already collected and what we still need before the board meeting. For the next hour, we methodically constructed the framework for Ethan's downfall. Diana took extensive notes, occasionally making calls to set specific legal mechanisms in motion. By the time we finished our coffee, a comprehensive strategy had taken shape. One last thing, Diana said as we prepared to leave. Are you certain this is what you want? Once we initiate these proceedings, there's no going back. Your marriage is over, and your relationship with Ethan will become irreparably adversarial. I thought about Ethan's face last night, not regretful or apologetic, but annoyed that his carefully arranged plan wasn't proceeding precisely as he'd scripted. My marriage ended the moment he decided to replace me with a younger model, I said, gathering my purse. He just didn't have the courtesy to tell me until after he'd arranged all the details to his advantage. Now I'm simply ensuring the outcome isn't what he expected. Diana smiled, a predatory expression that reminded me why she was the most feared corporate attorney in Boston. Then, let's go ruin Ethan Caldwell's day. I settled the bill and we walked through the hotel lobby together. As we approached the revolving doors, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure striding through the atrium. Ethan, looking rested and confident in a fresh suit, checking his watch with the practiced impatience of a man accustomed to others accommodating his schedule. Diana followed my gaze. "Convenient accommodation," she remarked quietly. "Indeed. Should we say hello?" There was a dangerous glint in her eye. "Not yet," I decided. "Let him enjoy his morning. The afternoon will be challenging enough." We slipped out before Ethan could spot us, Diana heading to her office to prepare the legal artillery while I made my way to another meeting, this one with Vivian Russell, Meridian's chief financial officer, and one of the few executives who had never fallen under Ethan's spell. Vivian was waiting for me at a small cafe a few blocks from Meridian's headquarters, far enough away that we wouldn't encounter any of Ethan's loyal lieutenants. She rose when I approached, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes sharp with curiosity. "Alexandra," she greeted me, "this is unexpected." "Thank you for meeting on such short notice, Vivian." We settled at a corner table, and I came directly to the point. "I need access to Meridian's complete financial records for the past 2 years, all executive expenses, particularly Ethan's, any unusual bonuses or promotions, especially regarding Olivia Palmer, and any financial transactions requiring only Ethan's authorization." Vivian's expression didn't change, but her posture straightened almost imperceptibly. "That's a comprehensive request. May I ask why?" "Because I own 51% of Meridian Technologies, and I believe my husband has been using company resources to fund his affair with his executive assistant." To her credit, Vivian didn't gasp or exclaim. Instead, she nodded slowly, as though pieces of a puzzle were finally falling into place. "I've had concerns," she admitted carefully. "Expenses that didn't align with stated purposes, resource allocations that seemed questionable. But Ethan is—" She paused, searching for a diplomatic phrasing. "Not receptive to questioning?" I suggested, a faint smile. "That's one way to put it. The last financial controller who challenged his expense reports was reassigned to our Omaha office." "I'm calling an emergency board meeting at 3 today," I informed her. "I'll need whatever documentation you can provide by then." Vivian checked her watch. "That's not much time." "I know. But Ethan has made it clear that time is of the essence. He's already initiated divorce proceedings." Understanding dawned in Vivian's eyes. "I see. And these financial records will be relevant to both corporate governance and your personal situation." "Precisely," she nodded decisively. "I can have a preliminary report ready by 2. It won't be comprehensive, but it will highlight the most significant irregularities." "That's all I need for now. Diana Chen's team will handle the deeper investigation." "Ati." The mention of Diana's name, Vivian's eyebrows rose. Everyone in Boston's corporate world knew Diana's reputation. "You're not playing around." "No," I agreed. "I'm not." "Good." Vivian's voice held unexpected heat. "For what it's worth, Alexandra, a number of us at Meridian have been concerned about Ethan's leadership recently. His decisions have become increasingly erratic, his treatment of staff more capricious. The board has been reluctant to intervene because of Meridian's continued growth, but—" She hesitated. "But growth doesn't necessarily indicate sound leadership," I finished for her. "Exactly." She stood, gathering her things with efficient movements. "I'll have that report for you by 2. And Alexandra? Whatever happens this afternoon, you have allies at Meridian. Not everyone is on Team Ethan." I felt a surprising warmth at her words. Thank you, Vivian. After she left, I checked my phone to find a series of text messages from Ethan. 15 a.m. We need to talk. I'm at the Four Seasons until noon. 8:47 a.m. Alexandra, stop being childish. This is happening whether you engage or not. 9:22 a.m. Jackson's preparing the paperwork. It would be better for everyone if we can agree on terms quietly. I smiled faintly at the mounting frustration evident in his messages. Ethan was accustomed to controlling every situation, to people, especially me, accommodating his wishes. My silence was already unsettling him, though he had no idea of the true disruption coming his way. I didn't respond to his texts. Instead, I called Robert Keene to confirm the board meeting arrangements. It's all set, he assured me. 3 p.m. in the main boardroom. I've informed all members it's a matter of utmost urgency. Has Ethan been notified? Not yet. His assistant? Robert paused delicately. Olivia Palmer, I supplied, keeping my voice neutral. Yes. Ms. Palmer indicated he's unavailable until early afternoon due to external meetings. As per your request, I've instructed my assistant to notify him only an hour before the meeting. Perfect. Thank you, Robert. Alexandra, he said, his tone softening. I don't know what's happening, but I want you to know that your father was one of my closest friends. If you need anything at all, you need only ask. I appreciate that more than you know. Robert, I'll see you at 3. My next call was to Patrick Sullivan, Meridian's head of security, and more importantly, a former FBI agent who owed his position to my recommendation, not Ethan's. Mrs. Caldwell, he answered formally. How can I help you? Patrick, I need a favor. A discreet one. Of course. No questions, no hesitation. Patrick understood the value of discretion. I need Ethan's access to Meridian systems temporarily. Suspended, effective at 2:55 p.m. today. Physical access, digital systems, everything. The suspension should appear to be a routine security protocol update. Nothing targeted. A brief pause. May I ask why? You'll understand at the board meeting. This afternoon. I promise it's both legal and necessary. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, consider it done. Anything else? Yes. I'll need security personnel stationed discreetly near the boardroom. Not visible, but available if needed. Expecting trouble? Just being thorough, I replied. Ethan can be volatile when challenged. Understood. I'll handle it personally. My final task before the board meeting was perhaps the most difficult, returning to the penthouse to change and prepare. I hadn't been back since leaving for my breakfast with Diana, and I was uncertain whether Ethan might be there. The doorman confirmed he hadn't returned, allowing me to enter my home, soon to be my former home, without confrontation. In our bedroom, I selected a navy suit that Ethan had always said made me look too severe, too businesslike, perfect for today. As I fastened my grandmother's pearls around my neck, my phone buzzed with another text from Ethan. 12:30 p.m. Alexandra, this is ridiculous. I'm trying to handle this like adults. Call me immediately. I smiled at his mounting frustration. Ethan had orchestrated his exit from our marriage with meticulous precision, expecting me to follow his script of quiet devastation. My refusal to engage was the first indication that his carefully constructed plan was unraveling. Diana called as I was gathering my materials for the board meeting. Everything's in place, she reported. The divorce petition has been filed with emergency orders to freeze all assets pending financial discovery. I've also prepared injunctions against any transfer of Meridian stock or modification of corporate governance. And the board presentation? Ready. I've distilled the ownership documentation to its essentials. Clear evidence of your controlling interest without overwhelming technical detail. The board will understand exactly who actually owns Meridian within the first 5 minutes. Perfect. Are You ready for this, Alexandra? It's going to be intense. I considered the question seriously. Was I ready to dismantle the facade I'd helped create? To step out of the shadows and reclaim my power? To watch Ethan's carefully constructed self-image crumble? I'm more than ready, I told her. I've been playing a supporting role for 12 years. It's time for me to step into the spotlight. Just as I ended the call with Diana, my phone lit up with a notification from Patrick Sullivan. Security protocols in place. Personnel stationed as requested. The pieces were all in position. Now it was time to execute the most important boardroom coup of my career. Meridian Technologies occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming tower in Boston's Seaport District, prime real estate that reflected the company's meteoric rise over the past decade. The lobby featured a massive rendering of the company logo in polished steel, with Ethan's favorite quote etched beneath it, "Vision without execution is hallucination." How ironic that today would prove just how thoroughly he'd hallucinated. His own success story. I arrived 40 minutes early, wanting to be settled in the boardroom before anyone else arrived. Patrick Sullivan met me at the executive elevator, his expression professionally neutral, but his eyes conveying silent support. "Mrs. Caldwell," he greeted me, swiping his security card to activate the elevator. "Everything is in place as requested. I've stationed Adams and Rivera near the boardroom. Experienced personnel. Very discreet." "Thank you, Patrick." As the elevator ascended, he added, "Mr. Caldwell arrived 20 minutes ago. He's currently in his office with Ms. Palmer." I nodded, unsurprised. Ethan would want Olivia close during what he likely assumed would be a difficult day of negotiating my exit from his life. Little did he know. "Has he received notification of the board meeting yet?" Patrick checked his watch. "Scheduled for delivery in approximately 3 minutes." The timing was perfect. Ethan would have just enough notice to attend, but insufficient time to investigate or strategize. He would walk into the boardroom expecting to dominate as usual, unaware that the ground had shifted beneath his feet. The executive floor was hushed when we arrived, the thick carpeting absorbing our footsteps as Patrick escorted me to the boardroom. Vivian Russell was already there, arranging documents at each board member's place. "Right on schedule," she said with a tight smile. "I've prepared copies of the financial summary for everyone. The most significant irregularities are highlighted." I reviewed her report quickly, nodding in appreciation. Vivian had done exceptional work in limited time. The document clearly outlined a pattern of Ethan using company resources for personal expenses. Luxury hotel stays with Olivia coded as strategic retreats, jewelry purchases processed as client gifts, even a down payment on a Cambridge apartment categorized as executive retention expense. "This is excellent, Vivian, thank you." "There's more," she said, lowering her voice. "I discovered a separate LLC formed 6 months ago, Caldwell Innovations. It's been receiving regular transfers from Meridian, ostensibly for external research and development. Over $2 million so far." My eyebrows rose. "And this entity is?" "Registered solely in Ethan's name. No connection to Meridian other than these payments, which he personally authorized. This was beyond inappropriate use of company funds for an affair. This was systematic embezzlement, potentially criminal fraud. I've included it in the report," Vivian confirmed. Page 12. Diana Chen arrived next, immaculately dressed in courtroom battle armor, a sharp black suit with subtle red accents. She carried a sleek leather portfolio and was accompanied by a younger attorney who immediately began setting up a laptop and presentation materials. "Alexandra," she greeted me. "We're ready. I've spoken with all the board members individually except Samuel Chen, who was unavailable, but his assistant confirmed he'll be attending." I nodded, feeling a curious calm settle over me. "Any word from Margaret about our arrangement?" "She called 20 minutes ago. Her husband will support us. Apparently, Princeton has expressed exceptional interest in their daughter's application." One by one, the board members arrived. Robert Keene first, then Justine Miles, followed by Terrence Washington and Philip Blackwell. Each greeted me with varying degrees of curiosity. My presence at a board meeting was unprecedented, but asked no questions, sensing the gravity of the situation. Samuel Chen was the last to arrive before Ethan, nodding to me with newfound respect. "Alexandra," he said simply. "Margaret sends her regards." At precisely 2:58 p.m., Patrick Sullivan's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at the screen, then at me. "Security protocols activated," he murmured. "Mr. Caldwell's access has been temporarily suspended for system updates. He should be receiving notification now." I could almost visualize Ethan's reaction. The flash of irritation, the imperious demand for immediate restoration, the disbelief when told it was a scheduled system-wide update that would be completed after the board meeting. At 3:03 p.m., the boardroom door swung open with more force than necessary. Ethan strode in, his face a carefully controlled mask of annoyance. He faltered momentarily when he saw me seated at the head of the table, his usual position, but recovered. "Quickly, Alexandra," he said, his tone conveying both surprise and dismissal. "I wasn't aware you'd be joining us." His gaze shifted to Diana, recognition flickering in his eyes. "Diana Chen. Interesting choice of legal representation." Diana smiled pleasantly but said nothing. Ethan turned to Robert Keene. "Robert, what's this about? My schedule today is incredibly tight, and this meeting wasn't on my calendar until an hour ago." Robert's expression remained neutral. "Perhaps you should take a seat, Ethan. Alexandra has called this emergency meeting to discuss matters of significant importance to Meridian." Confusion crossed Ethan's face. "Alexandra called? She's not a board member. She has no authority to call a meeting." "Actually," I said, speaking for the first time since his arrival, "I do. Please sit down, Ethan. We have much to discuss." For a moment he seemed ready to object further, but something in the collective expression of the board members, their calm attention focused on me rather than him, gave him pause. He took a seat halfway down the table, noticeably distant from the leadership position I now occupied. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," I began, my voice steady. "I've called this emergency meeting to address two critical issues. First, the ownership structure of Meridian Technologies, and second, what appears to be a pattern of financial misconduct by our current CEO." Ethan's face flushed. "This is absurd. Whatever personal issues exist between us, Alexandra, this is not the forum." "Actually," Diana interrupted smoothly, "this is precisely the forum, Mr. Caldwell, given that Mrs. Caldwell is the majority shareholder of Meridian Technologies." The room fell silent. Ethan stared at Diana, then at me, disbelief evident in his expression. "That's impossible," he finally said. "I founded this company. I raised the capital. I own controlling interest." Diana opened her portfolio and distributed documents to each board member. "These are the original funding documents for Meridian Technologies, along with subsequent capitalization tables and voting rights agreements. As you'll see, Mrs. Caldwell, through a series of holding companies, provided the initial seed funding and has maintained majority ownership through all subsequent funding rounds." The board members began reviewing the documents with varying expressions of surprise and interest. Robert Keene, who had likely suspected something of this nature given his friendship with my father, simply nodded thoughtfully. "This is some kind of trick," Ethan insisted, not even bothering to look at the documents. "A desperate play in our divorce proceedings. The board won't be manipulated by marital disputes." "This has nothing to do with your divorce, Mr. Caldwell," Diana replied calmly. "These ownership structures were established before your marriage, have been maintained throughout Meridian's existence, and are thoroughly documented in the company's legal records. Records you apparently never bothered to examine closely." "Samuel." Chen looked up from the documents. "These appear legitimate. The ownership structure is complex but quite clear. Reed Ventures Holdings?" He glanced at me. Your family office? I nodded. My grandfather established it. I took control after my father's death, before Ethan and I were married. This is preposterous, Ethan insisted, finally grabbing the documents and scanning them frantically. I would have known. I would have... He stopped abruptly, his finger tracing a signature on the founding documents. His signature. You signed all the original paperwork, Ethan, I said quietly. You were so eager for the funding, so convinced of your vision, that you never questioned where the money came from or what rights you were granting in exchange. His face had gone pale. You've been lying to me for 12 years. No, I corrected him. I simply allowed you to believe what you wanted to believe, that you were the brilliant self-made founder rather than a frontman for my investment. It seemed important to you, and at the time, I was content to remain in the background. Robert Keene cleared his throat. While this ownership revelation is certainly significant, you mentioned financial misconduct, Alexandra. That's an accusation. That requires substantial evidence. Indeed. I nodded to Vivian, who distributed her financial summary to the board. Vivian Russell, our CFO, has prepared this preliminary report detailing a pattern of inappropriate use of company funds by Mr. Caldwell for personal expenses, as well as evidence of what appears to be systematic embezzlement through a separate entity called Caldwell Innovations. As the board members began reviewing the financial documentation, Ethan's expression shifted from shock to barely contained rage. This is a witch hunt, he snapped. Vivian has always resented my leadership. These so-called irregularities are standard CEO expenses, approved through proper channels. By proper channels, do you mean yourself? Vivian asked coolly. Because as CFO, I was never consulted on these expenditures, many of which bypassed our normal approval processes entirely. Terrence Washington, who had been silently reviewing the financial report, looked up with a frown. $2 million transferred to a private LLC for unspecified research and development? With no deliverables, no contracts, no oversight? He turned to Ethan. What exactly does Caldwell Innovations do, Ethan? The silence that followed was damning. Philip Blackwell, who had built and sold 3 tech companies before joining Meridian's board, closed the financial report with a decisive motion. This is textbook embezzlement, he said flatly. If even half of these allegations are substantiated, we're talking about criminal behavior. They're not allegations, they're facts, Vivian stated firmly. Every transaction is documented in our financial system. The pattern is clear and ongoing. Justine Miles, the only other woman on the board and a former prosecutor, shook her head. The SEC would have a field day with this, not to mention the possibility of criminal charges. Throughout this exchange, I watched Ethan carefully. His expression had shifted from rage to calculation, his mind working rapidly, searching for an exit strategy, a way to regain control of the rapidly deteriorating situation. This is all a misunderstanding, he finally said, his voice taking on the smooth, persuasive tone he used to charm investors. Caldwell Innovations is a stealth R&D initiative exploring technologies too sensitive for Meridian's normal development. Channels. The personal expenses Vivian has highlighted were legitimate business activities, meetings with potential partners, relationship building with key clients. He turned to me, his eyes cold despite his conciliatory words. Alexandra, I understand you're upset about our personal situation, but this vindictive attack doesn't serve anyone's interests, least of all Meridian's. This isn't about vindication, Ethan, I replied calmly. It's about governance. It's about responsibility. It's about the truth. The truth, he sneered, is that you're trying to destroy what I've built because you can't accept that our marriage is over. Robert Keene cleared his throat. The evidence suggests, Ethan, that what you believe you've built has in fact been Alexandra's creation all along, financially at least. And the evidence of financial misconduct is compelling, Justine added. These aren't minor accounting discrepancies. This is a pattern of systematic abuse of company resources. I move that we temporarily suspend Ethan Caldwell from his position as CEO pending a full investigation, Samuel Chen said unexpectedly. Given the seriousness of these allegations and the clear documentation of Mrs. Caldwell's controlling interest in Meridian, it would be a breach of our fiduciary duty to allow the current situation to continue. Seconded, said Terrence Washington immediately. Robert Keene nodded. Those in favor? One by one, hands raised around the table. Robert, Justine, Terrence, Philip, Samuel. A unanimous vote. The motion carries, Robert announced. Ethan Caldwell is hereby suspended from his position as CEO of Meridian Technologies, effective immediately, pending a full investigation into these financial irregularities. Ethan stared at them in disbelief. You can't do this. I built this company. I am from this company. Actually, Mr. Caldwell, Diana interjected, they not only can do this, they are legally obligated to take action given the evidence presented. And as majority shareholder, Mrs. Caldwell has the authority to name an interim CEO immediately. All eyes turned to me. I nominate Vivian Russell as interim CEO, I said without hesitation. Her financial acumen and ethical standards make her the ideal candidate to guide Meridian through this transitional period. Vivian looked startled but composed herself quickly. All in favor? Robert asked. Again, a unanimous vote. Effective immediately, Vivian Russell will serve as interim CEO of Meridian Technologies, Robert declared. Now, regarding the ongoing investigation, this is insane, Ethan interrupted, standing abruptly. I won't allow it. You all work for me. Actually, Mr. Caldwell, Diana corrected, it appears they work for Mrs. Caldwell, and as of this moment, so do the security personnel. Waiting outside. On cue, Patrick Sullivan opened the boardroom door. Adam and Rivera stood just outside, their presence a clear message. Mr. Caldwell, Patrick said professionally, I'll need to escort you from the premises and collect your company credentials. Ethan's face contorted with fury. Alexandra, you vindictive bitch. You think you can just take everything from me? You're nothing without me. Nothing. His words hung in the air, revealing more about our marriage than any explanation I could have offered. The board. Mr. Caldwell, Patrick repeated more firmly, please come with me. Ethan looked around the room, at the board members who had unanimously voted to remove him, at Vivian, who would now occupy his office, at Diana, whose legal expertise had helped orchestrate his downfall, and finally at me, the wife he had underestimated, the woman whose financial genius had built the empire he claimed as his own. This isn't over, he said, his voice low and threatening. Actually, Ethan, I replied calmly, it is. Your personal belongings will be packed and delivered to the Four Seasons, where I believe you're currently staying with Ms. Palmer. The locks at my penthouse have already been changed. Oh, and you might want to call Jackson Ellis. I believe he'll need to recuse himself from our divorce proceedings, given the conflict of interest now that Meridian will be pursuing legal action regarding the financial irregularities. Ethan stared at me, speechless with rage, before Patrick Sullivan firmly guided him from the room. The door closed behind them, leaving a moment of profound silence in the boardroom. Robert Keene was the first to speak. Well, Alexandra, it seems you've been something of a silent partner all these years. Not anymore, I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. From now on, I intend to be very much present in Meridian's governance. As is your right as majority shareholder, Justine agreed, though I must admit, I'm curious why you remained in the background for so long. I considered the question thoughtfully. It seemed important to Ethan to be seen as the visionary founder, the self-made success. I loved him enough to give him that narrative, even at the cost of my own recognition. And now? Philip asked. Now I believe Meridian deserves transparent leadership and ethical governance. Vivian, I turn to our new interim CEO. I have complete confidence in your ability to guide the company through this transition. Vivian nodded, the responsibility of her new position already settling onto her shoulders. "I won't let you down, Alexandra. Or the company." As the meeting shifted to discussing next steps for the investigation and leadership transition, my phone vibrated with an incoming call. "Ethan." I declined it, then watched as text messages began to appear in rapid succession. "You won't get away. With this, I built Meridian. Me. Not you. You'll regret this, Alexandra. I promise you that." I silenced my phone and returned my attention to the board meeting, where plans for Meridian's future, a future without Ethan Caldwell at the helm, were taking shape. The company would survive this transition. It might even thrive under new leadership that valued transparency and ethical conduct over ego and image. As for Ethan, he was now experiencing the very public humiliation he had so carefully planned for me. Removed from his position, escorted from the building, his carefully constructed identity as a brilliant founder and CEO shattered beyond repair. The meeting concluded with a clear action plan, an independent audit of all financial records, a press release announcing leadership changes, and a communication strategy for employees, investors, and clients. Diana would coordinate with Meridian's legal team on potential legal actions regarding the misappropriated funds. As the board members filed out, Robert Keene lingered. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. "He always said you were the financial genius in the family." "Thank you, Robert. That means a great deal." Alone in the boardroom, I allowed myself a moment to absorb what had just occurred. In the space of 24 hours, my life had been completely transformed. My marriage ended. My role at Meridian dramatically changed. My carefully constructed identity as Ethan's supportive wife discarded in favor of something more authentic. There would be challenges ahead, of course. Ethan would not accept defeat gracefully. The divorce proceedings would likely be contentious. The investigation into his financial misconduct might lead to criminal charges. And somewhere in this maelstrom was Olivia Palmer, pregnant and perhaps only now realizing that her future with Ethan might not include the security and status she had anticipated. But for the first time in years, I felt truly myself. Alexandra Reed, not Alexandra Caldwell. The woman who had built Meridian from behind the scenes was now stepping into the spotlight, ready to claim her rightful place. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from an unknown number. "It's Olivia. We need to talk." I stared at the message, considering my options. Olivia Palmer represented everything I'd lost, or thought I'd lost, in one devastating dinner. The future Ethan had chosen instead of our marriage. The woman wearing the anniversary gift was meant for me. The mother of his child. And yet, as I'd told Diana earlier, I had no quarrel with Olivia. She wasn't the first woman Ethan had pursued, merely the most consequential. If anything, I felt a strange kinship with her. We had both been manipulated. By the same man, albeit in different ways. I typed a response. "Where and when?" Her reply came quickly. "Now? There's a cafe near Meridian, Bluestone and Congress." Interesting that she'd chosen a public place, far enough from Meridian to avoid company gossip, but close enough to be convenient. I checked my watch, 4:15 p.m. The board meeting had concluded more efficiently than I'd anticipated. I responded, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Diana caught me as I was leaving the boardroom. "Where are you going?" "We still have the press statement to finalize, and you should be present for the executive team briefing." "I need to handle something personal," I replied, showing Olivia's message. Diana's eyebrows rose. "Are you sure that's wise? She's carrying Ethan's child. Her interests are fundamentally opposed to yours." "Are they?" I considered it. She's pregnant by a man who's just lost his position, may face criminal charges, and has significantly less financial security than he claimed. If I were in her position, I'd be reassessing my options. Diana studied me carefully. "You're not planning to be magnanimous, are you? Because while that might feel noble, it's rarely strategic." I smiled. I'm planning to listen. Nothing more, nothing less. Take your security detail, she insisted. Patrick can have someone follow discreetly. Given Ethan's texts, we can't rule out this being some kind of trap. It seemed excessive, but Diana's caution was well-founded. I agreed to her terms, and Patrick arranged for a security officer named Melissa to shadow me, close enough to intervene if necessary, distant enough to remain unnoticed. Bluestone Cafe was half empty when I arrived, the late afternoon lull between lunch and dinner crowds. Olivia sat in a corner booth, a glass of water untouched before her. She looked different from last night, less polished, more vulnerable. The emerald necklace was conspicuously absent. She spotted me immediately, her expression a complex mixture of anxiety and determination. I slid into the booth across from her, signaling to the waitress that I'd like coffee. "Thank you for coming," Olivia said, her voice steadier than I'd expected. "I wasn't sure you would. I was curious," I admitted. "It's not every day your husband's pregnant mistress asks for a meeting the day after he introduces you at your anniversary dinner." She flinched slightly. "I told him that was a terrible idea, cruel and unnecessary. And yet you went along with it." Her eyes dropped to her water glass. "I did. I've been going along with a lot of Ethan's ideas lately, each one slightly worse than the last. That's partly why I wanted to talk to you." The waitress arrived with my coffee, and I took a moment to add cream, giving Olivia space to continue. "I imagine you hate me," she said when the waitress departed. "I don't hate you, Olivia. I don't know you well enough to hate you. But you must resent me. The pregnancy, the necklace, the dinner." I took a sip of coffee, considering my response carefully. "I resent Ethan's choices, his deliberate cruelty, his betrayal of our marriage. You're a symptom of his character, not the cause of it." She looked startled by my assessment. "That's unusually philosophical. 12 years of marriage gives you perspective. You're not the first, you know, just the first to get pregnant." Her hand moved protectively to her stomach. "I didn't plan this. The pregnancy, I mean. It just happened." "These things rarely proceed according to plan," I agreed. "Though it does raise the question of why you wanted to meet. I assume you've heard about the board meeting?" Her eyes widened. "It's all over the company. Ethan's been suspended. You own Meridian? Security escorted him out." She leaned forward. "Is it true? All of it?" "Yes, every word." "My God." She sat back, processing this information. "He always said he built Meridian from nothing, that he was the visionary founder who attracted the investors through sheer force of will. Ethan has always been gifted at constructing narratives that serve his ego," I observed. "It's one of his most consistent traits. Like telling me our relationship was the great love story of his life? That his marriage was a loveless arrangement maintained for appearances? That you understood and accepted his need for connection elsewhere?" Her voice held a bitter edge now. "Classic Ethan," I nodded. "Let me guess. He also told you that, once certain business matters were settled, he would leave me and build a new life with you. That the timing had to be strategic to protect his position at Meridian." Olivia looked stunned. "Almost word for word. How did you—" "Because it's the same story he told Christina in marketing 3 years ago. And Danielle from the Boston Biotech conference before that. Ethan doesn't just recycle his tactics, he recycles his entire script." She was silent for a long moment, absorbing this revelation. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "He told me you knew about us. That you had an understanding, an arrangement. Last night was the first time I realized that was a lie. Ethan has a flexible relationship with the truth," I said dryly, "particularly when the truth interferes with what he wants. Like telling me you were bitter and vindictive, that you'd try to destroy him out of spite if you knew about us." She shook her head. "But you're not what he described at all." No more than you're the gold-digging opportunist he likely described to his friends. That earned a faint smile. Touché. She fidgeted with her water glass. The reason I wanted to meet, I need to know what happens now, to me, to my position at Meridian, to... She gestured toward her stomach. That depends on several factors, I replied honestly. Including what? You know about Ethan's financial activities at Meridian. Her gaze sharpened. The transfer to Caldwell Innovations, you mean? Now it was my turn to be surprised. You know about that. She nodded. I handled most of the paperwork. Ethan said it was a special project, very hush-hush, potential breakthrough technology that needed to be developed outside Meridian's normal channels. And you believed him? At first. She sighed. But then I saw the bank statements. No employees, no research expenses, just money sitting in accounts. When I asked questions, he became evasive, then controlling. When did this start? About 6 months ago. Right after... She hesitated. After you told him about the pregnancy, I guessed. She nodded. Everything changed then. He became more secretive, more demanding. The Ethan I thought I knew, charming, attentive, seemingly considerate, disappeared. In his place was someone colder, more calculating. The real Ethan, I suggested. The one I've seen glimpses of for years. The one who emerged fully when he no longer needed to maintain the facade. I think you're right, she admitted. Last night, watching him at dinner, the way he seemed to enjoy your discomfort, how he relished having both of us there. It was like seeing a stranger. Not a stranger, I corrected her. Just Ethan without the mask. The waitress returned, asking if we wanted to order anything else. We both declined. I have to know, Olivia said after the waitress left. Did you always know about Meridian? That you owned it, I mean? Of course. It was my investment that launched the company. But I allowed Ethan to be the public face, to claim the founder's glory. It seemed important to him, and at the time, I loved him, enough to give him that. And now? Now I need to protect what I've built, which brings us back to your question about what happens next. I studied her carefully. What do you want, Olivia, besides job security? She considered the question seriously. Honestly, I want out of the tangled web Ethan has created, out of the lies and manipulation. I look at what's happening now, his rage texts, the threats he's already making, and I realize this is just the beginning. He's going to fight dirty, use every weapon he has. Her hand went to her stomach again, including this baby. Likely, I agreed. Ethan views people as either assets or obstacles. Right now, you're still an asset in his eyes. The mother of his child, a sympathetic figure he can use in his narrative of being wronged. But I don't want to be used anymore, she said firmly. Not by Ethan, not by anyone. I want... She paused, gathering her thoughts. I want to make my own decisions, create my own path forward, and I want my child to be free from Ethan's manipulations. I nodded, respecting her clarity. Then I think we may have aligned interests, at least temporarily. What do you mean? Ethan is facing serious allegations of financial misconduct. The evidence Vivian has uncovered so far is compelling, but your testimony about Caldwell Innovations could be crucial. If you're willing to cooperate with the investigation, provide what you know about the transfers and Ethan's instructions regarding them. You want me to testify against him, she concluded, to help build your case. It's not just my case, Olivia. It's about corporate governance, about misappropriated funds, about Ethan's abuse of his position. But yes, your cooperation would be valuable. And in exchange? In exchange, I can ensure your position at Meridian remains secure, regardless of the outcome with Ethan. I can also guarantee that your child's future is protected. A trust fund for education, healthcare, whatever they might need. Her eyes widened. You would do that? Even though... She gestured between us, the unspoken reality of our situation hanging in the air. The child is innocent in all this, I said simply. And while Ethan has proven himself unworthy of trust or loyalty, that doesn't mean his child should suffer for his failings. She was quiet for a long moment, considering my proposal. I'll cooperate, she finally said. I'll tell the investigators everything I know about Caldwell Innovations, the transfers, all of it. But I need something else. What? Protection from Ethan. Her voice was steady, but fear flickered in her eyes. When he realizes I'm working with you, with the investigation, he's going to be furious. And Ethan's fury is... She shuddered slightly. I'm familiar with it, I said quietly. And yes, I can arrange protection. Security for your home, escorts if necessary. Meridian has resources. Thank you. The relief in her voice was palpable. There's one more thing you should know. She reached into her purse and withdrew a small USB drive. Copies of all the Caldwell Innovations documentation, transfer authorizations, the LLC formation documents, even emails where Ethan specifically instructs me to process these transactions. Outside normal channels, I stared at the drive, then at Olivia. You made copies. After things started changing, after I saw who he really was, I thought I might need insurance. She pushed the drive across the table. Consider it a gesture of good faith. I picked, up the drive, this small device potentially containing evidence that could seal Ethan's fate. Why didn't you take this to Vivian yourself? Or to the board? Ethan made it very clear what would happen to anyone who betrayed him. He has friends in the company, loyal directors, executives who owe their positions to him. I didn't know who I could trust. She looked at me directly. But after seeing what happened today, how the board responded to the evidence you presented, I believe you might actually be able to hold him accountable. I slipped the drive into my pocket. I intend to try. As we prepared to leave, Olivia hesitated. There's something else you should know. Ethan's been meeting with Victor Zhang. The name registered immediately. Victor Zhang, CEO of Meridian's chief competitor, Nexus Dynamics. What kind of meetings? Private ones. Off the books. He's been very secretive about them, but I saw messages on his phone. They've met at least 3 times in the past month. This was potentially explosive information. If Ethan had been sharing Meridian's proprietary information with our biggest competitor, especially while planning his exit, it would constitute a severe breach of his fiduciary duty, possibly even corporate espionage. Do you know what they discussed? She shook her head. No details, but the timing coincides with the Caldwell Innovations transfers. And after each meeting, Ethan would initiate another transfer. Pieces were beginning to fit together. Ethan's secret meetings with a competitor, the systematic transfer of funds to his private entity, his plans to leave me and potentially relocate with Olivia. It painted a disturbing picture of premeditated betrayal on multiple levels. Thank you for telling me this, Olivia. It could be critically important. As we stood to leave, she asked the question that had likely been on her mind throughout our conversation. Do you think he ever loved either of us? Truly? I considered it carefully before answering. I think Ethan loves the idea of being loved. He craves admiration, devotion, validation. But love requires empathy, requires seeing another person as fully human rather than as an extension of yourself. I'm not sure Ethan is capable of that, she nodded slowly. That's what I was afraid of. Outside the cafe, I introduced Olivia to Melissa, explaining that security would be arranged for her apartment immediately. We exchanged contact information, this strange new alliance formalized through necessity rather than choice. As Olivia walked toward her car, I felt an unexpected sense of solidarity with this woman who, just 24 hours ago, I had viewed as the embodiment of my husband's betrayal. Now she was potentially a crucial ally in holding him accountable. In the car returning to Meridian, I called Diana to update her on this unexpected development, particularly the USB drive and the revelation about Victor Zhang. "This changes everything," Diana said. "If we can prove Ethan was selling company secrets to Zhang while embezzling funds." "Alexandra, we're not just talking about civil liability anymore. We're talking criminal charges, potentially federal ones." "I know," I replied, watching Boston's skyline emerge as we crossed the bridge back into the city. "Arrange a meeting with the FBI's white-collar crime division. And Diana? Make sure Olivia has whatever protection she needs. I believe she's genuinely afraid of Ethan's reaction when he discovers she's cooperating with us." "Already on it. Patrick's team is setting up security for her apartment building as we speak." "And Alexandra? This alliance with Olivia? It's unexpected, but potentially brilliant. Ethan won't see it coming." "No," I agreed. "He won't." As we approached Meridian's gleaming headquarters, my phone lit up with another message from Ethan. "You've had your fun. We need to talk. Meet me at the penthouse at 8. I showed the message to Melissa, who immediately shook her head. "Not safe, Mrs. Caldwell. If Mr. Caldwell wants to meet, it should be in a neutral location with security present." She was right, of course. Ethan's rage would be building, his sense of entitlement and injustice festering into something potentially dangerous. The coldly calculating businessman I'd known for years had been replaced by something more volatile, more unpredictable. I didn't respond to his message. Let him wonder. Let him wait. The balance of power had shifted, and it was time Ethan understood that his commands no longer dictated my actions. Back at Meridian, Vivian had already begun her role as interim CEO, meeting with the executive team to assure them of business continuity despite the leadership change. The news of Ethan's suspension had spread through the company, and the atmosphere was thick with tension and speculation. Robert Keene met me in the executive reception area. "Alexandra, we need to discuss communication strategy. The phones are ringing off the hook. Investors, clients, media. Everyone wants to know what's happening." "Let's use my office," I suggested, leading him toward what had been Ethan's corner suite. The space felt different already. Security had removed Ethan's personal items, leaving behind only the corporate furnishings. His presence, so dominant just hours ago, was already fading. "We've drafted a press statement," Robert said, handing me a tablet. "Straight to the point. Leadership change due to governance concerns, ongoing investigation into financial irregularities, commitment to transparency and shareholder value." I reviewed the statement quickly. Add something about full confidence in Vivian Russell as interim CEO, and remove any language that might prejudice potential legal proceedings against Ethan. "Already done in the revised version," he assured me. "We also need to address the ownership revelation. It's going to raise questions. Why the secrecy all these years? Why reveal it now?" I nodded, understanding the delicacy of the situation. "Keep it simple. Alexandra Reed Caldwell has been a founding investor in Meridian Technologies since its inception, maintaining a private majority stake through established investment vehicles. Recent governance concerns necessitated a more public role in company oversight. No need to mention the divorce or Ethan's personal behavior." "Perfect." Robert made notes on his tablet. "One more thing. Jackson Ellis called. He seemed distressed to learn about the board's actions regarding Ethan. Mentioned something about having already filed divorce paperwork on Ethan's behalf." I smiled faintly. "I imagine he's quite concerned about the conflict of interest now that his client is facing potential legal action from the company." "Exactly. He's formally recusing himself from both matters. Seems he doesn't want to be caught in the crossfire." "Wise decision," I observed. "Rats and sinking ships come to mind." As Robert left to finalize the press statement, Diana arrived, with news from the forensic accountants already examining Meridian's financial records. "They've found more," she reported grimly. "Much more," Ethan's been systematically skimming for years. Consultancy fees to shell companies, inflated vendor contracts with kickbacks, phantom employees on international subsidiaries' payrolls. Caldwell Innovations was just the most recent and brazen example. How much are we talking about? Preliminary estimate? Upwards of $6 million over the past 4 years. The pattern accelerated dramatically in the last 6 months. Since Olivia told him about the pregnancy, I noted. He was building his escape fund. Exactly. And with this new information about meetings with Victor Zhang, Diana's expression was grave. Alexandra, we need to consider the possibility that Ethan was planning to take Meridian's intellectual property to Nexus Dynamics. The timing aligns perfectly. Liquidating assets, setting up an external funding stream, preparing for a clean break from both you and the company. The scope of Ethan's betrayal was expanding beyond even my initial assessment. Not just a personal betrayal with his affair and pregnancy. Not just financial misconduct with company funds, but potentially corporate espionage that could have devastated Meridian's competitive position. Contact the FBI, I instructed Diana. Tonight. This goes beyond internal governance issues now. As darkness fell over Boston, I stood at the window of what had been Ethan's office, now temporarily mine, and watched the city lights emerge. In just 24 hours, everything had changed. The careful facade of my marriage had crumbled, revealing the rot beneath. The company Ethan claimed as his crowning achievement had been reclaimed by its true owner. And the man who had orchestrated my public humiliation was now facing the dismantling of his carefully constructed identity. My phone buzzed again with another message from Ethan, this one simply reading, "This isn't over." Ethan's words glowed ominously. On my phone screen, a digital threat hovering in the gathering darkness of the office. I knew my husband well enough to understand this wasn't mere posturing. Ethan Caldwell didn't accept defeat, didn't acknowledge limitations, and certainly didn't relinquish power without a fight. His message wasn't just a statement, it was a promise. I didn't have to wait long to discover what form his counterstrike would take. Alexandra. Vivian appeared in the doorway, her expression tense. You need to see this. She handed me her tablet, open to the Boston Business Journal's website. The headline made my blood run cold. Meridian Technologies in turmoil. CEO Ethan Caldwell claims hostile takeover by estranged wife. The article, published less than an hour after Ethan had been escorted from the building, quoted sources close to the CEO describing a vindictive wife using arcane legal maneuvers to seize control of her husband's company in the midst of divorce proceedings. It painted Ethan as the visionary founder victimized by both marital betrayal and corporate machinations. Most concerning was the article's suggestion that Meridian's stability was now in question, with unnamed investors expressing serious concerns about the company's future under inexperienced leadership. He's going for the jugular, Vivian observed, trying to spook the market before we can even issue our statement. My phone rang. Diana. Have you seen the Business Journal piece? Yes. Ethan works fast. It's not just the Journal. He's given an exclusive interview to Channel 5 News, scheduled to air at 6. Their promo teaser promises shocking revelations about corporate espionage and marital betrayal at one of Boston's premier tech companies. I checked my watch. 5:38 p.m. He's trying to control the narrative. Exactly. We need to get ahead of this, Alexandra. The press statement isn't enough. You need to go on camera yourself, present the facts directly. No, I decided. That's exactly what Ethan wants. To turn this into a public he said she said, reduce it to a marital spat rather than corporate governance. We stay the course. Release the statement, focus on the financial irregularities, emphasize the board's unanimous decision. Robert knocked on the open door, looking grim. You've seen the article? We're discussing countermeasures now, I confirmed. There's more, he said. Ethan's attorney, not Jackson Ellis, a new one, Martin Sheridan, has filed an emergency motion claiming the board meeting was procedurally invalid. They're requesting a temporary injunction to reinstate Ethan pending a full hearing. Sheridan, a name that sent a chill down my spine. Martin Sheridan was Boston's most aggressive corporate attorney, notorious for scorched earth litigation tactics and ethical flexibility that bordered on the criminal. His involvement signaled Ethan's intention to wage all-out legal warfare. Can they succeed? Vivian asked. Diana, still on speakerphone, answered. Unlikely. The board meeting followed all procedural requirements, and Alexandra's ownership documentation is ironclad. But they're not aiming for legal victory yet. They're trying to create uncertainty, shake investor confidence, and pressure the board to reconsider. It's a classic Ethan strategy, I noted. When direct confrontation fails, attack from multiple angles, create chaos, then offer yourself as the solution to the very crisis you engineered. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Patricia Warner, Meridian's head of investor relations. I put Diana on hold to take it. Alexandra, we're getting calls from major shareholders. The Vanguard Group, BlackRock, 3 of our largest pension fund investors. They're requesting emergency briefings. Schedule them for tomorrow morning. Video conference, 1 hour each. Emphasize that we welcome their questions and value their continued support. And if they ask about the Business Journal article, tell them we'll address all concerns in the briefing, but they can rest assured that the board's actions were taken in accordance with corporate governance best practices, based on concrete evidence of financial impropriety. As I ended the call, with Patricia, another text from Ethan arrived. Channel 5 at 6. You might want to watch. Still time to fix this before irreparable damage is done. He's bluffing, Diana stated confidently when I shared the message. Standard intimidation tactic. Maybe, I conceded, but we should be prepared for whatever he's planning. Diana, can you stay at Meridian for the broadcast? I want legal eyes on whatever claims he makes. Already on my way. I'll bring Tom West in. From our crisis management team, Robert's phone chimed with an alert. It's happening already. Meridian's stock is down 3% in after-hours trading on the news. That's actually less than I expected, Vivian observed. The market's taking a wait-and-see approach. For now, I cautioned. But that could change after Ethan's interview airs. Patrick Sullivan appeared next, his security team having completed a sweep of the executive floor. Mrs. Caldwell, we've secured the premises and implemented the enhanced protocols you requested. I should inform you that Mr. Caldwell attempted to enter the building 20 minutes ago but was denied access. How did he react? Not well. There may have been some colorful language directed at the security staff. We have it on camera if needed. Document everything, I instructed. Every interaction, every access attempt. And Patrick, what about Olivia Palmer's security arrangements? In place. We have personnel stationed at her apartment building, and she's been provided with direct emergency contact protocols. Thank you. I turned back to Vivian and Robert. We have 30 minutes until Ethan's interview airs. Let's use that time to prepare our responses to whatever he throws at us. The next half hour was a flurry of activity, conference calls with board members, strategy sessions with the communication team, consultation with Diana's legal associates who had arrived, with formidable stacks of documentation. By 5:55 p.m., we had gathered in the executive conference room, multiple screens displaying different news channels, all waiting for Ethan's appearance on Channel 5. Remember, Diana cautioned as the news program's opening graphics played, Ethan will be performing for sympathy, playing the wronged husband and visionary founder. Expect emotional appeals rather than substantive rebuttals. The anchor's grave expression filled the screen. Tonight, exclusive, Boston Tech CEO Ethan Caldwell speaks out on what he calls a calculated corporate coup orchestrated by his estranged wife. Allegations of deception, manipulation, and revenge at one of the city's most successful companies. The camera cut to Ethan, looking appropriately somber in a crisp white shirt, no tie, the top button undone, a careful calibration of business casual that suggested he'd been caught off guard rather than staged for this interview. The setting was the Four Seasons lobby, implying he'd been ambushed by reporters rather than having arranged this exclusive himself. "Mr. Caldwell, can you explain what happened at Meridian Technologies today?" Ethan's expression conveyed dignified pain. "It's difficult to discuss publicly, Karen, but Meridian's shareholders and employees deserve the truth. Today, my wife, who recently learned I was planning to file for divorce, used a complex legal maneuver to temporarily seize control of the company I founded and built from nothing. Your wife claims she's actually the majority owner of Meridian. Is that true?" Ethan offered a sad smile. "Alexandra provided some initial family capital through investment vehicles 12 years ago, yes. That's never been a secret within the company. But to suggest that makes her the owner of Meridian is like saying the bank that gives you a mortgage owns your house." I had to admire the analogy's effectiveness, completely inaccurate but intuitively appealing to viewers without financial background. "Mr. Caldwell, the board voted unanimously to suspend you pending investigation into financial irregularities. How do you respond to those allegations?" His expression hardened slightly. "Those allegations are a smokescreen, Karen. Every financial transaction at Meridian goes through rigorous approval processes and compliance reviews. What's being characterized as irregularities are actually strategic investments in confidential R&D initiatives that could transform Meridian's future." "Are you referring to Caldwell Innovations?" Ethan appeared momentarily surprised that the interviewer knew this detail, but recovered quickly. "Exactly. Caldwell Innovations is a cutting-edge research entity developing proprietary technology that requires isolation from Meridian's main operations for both security and intellectual property protection. The board was fully briefed on its existence and purpose. A blatant lie, but delivered with such conviction that even I might have believed him if I didn't know better. Sources tell us you were escorted from the building by security. Is that accurate?" Ethan's expression shifted to one of regretful confirmation. "Unfortunately, yes. A humiliating experience orchestrated for maximum impact. After 12 years, building Meridian, creating hundreds of jobs and millions in shareholder value, I was treated like a criminal, all because I had the audacity to end a marriage that wasn't working." "And what about the allegations regarding your relationship with Olivia Palmer, your executive assistant who is reportedly pregnant with your child?" Here, Ethan adopted an expression of dignified restraint. "I won't discuss the details of my personal life on television, Karen. But I will say this. My marriage had effectively ended years ago, though Alexandra and I maintained appearances for the sake of Meridian's public image. Olivia and I developed feelings for one another over time, and now we're expecting a child together. It's unfortunate that this personal transition has become fodder for corporate warfare." "What happens next, Mr. Caldwell?" "I've filed for an emergency injunction to correct this governance travesty. I'm confident the courts will recognize this for what it is, a vindictive attempt to use corporate machinery for personal revenge. In the meantime, I'm deeply concerned about Meridian's stability. Our clients, investors, and especially our dedicated employees deserve better than to be pawns in a marital dispute." The interview concluded with Ethan looking directly into the camera, his expression a perfect blend of concern and determination. "To everyone at Meridian, I will fight for our company, for our shared vision, for the future we've been building together. This isn't over." As the program cut to commercial, silence fell over the conference room. Ethan's performance had been masterful, controlled, sympathetic, presenting himself as the reasonable party while subtly undermining both my motivations and Meridian's stability under new leadership. "Well," Diana said finally, "he's still an excellent liar." "The claim that the board knew about Caldwell Innovations is particularly bold," Robert noted. "Completely false. but difficult to disprove in the court of public opinion. And characterizing his dismissal as solely related to our marriage rather than financial misconduct shifts the narrative exactly where he wants it, I added. Vivian checked her tablet. Stocks down another 2%. Not catastrophic, but concerning. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Watching Channel 5. Everything he's saying is a lie. I have emails proving the board was never informed about Caldwell Innovations. I showed the message to Diana, who nodded appreciatively. Our unexpected ally continues to deliver. Get those emails ASAP. Patrick Sullivan entered with a security update. Mrs. Caldwell, we've detected unusual access attempts on Meridian servers. IT security is handling it, but they believe it's a coordinated attempt to extract data. Ethan, I said immediately. He's trying to get evidence before we can secure it, or planting false information. Already addressed, Patrick assured me. We implemented full access changes immediately after the board meeting. These attempts are coming from outside, not internal credentials. My mind was racing. Ethan wouldn't attempt something so obvious without a specific target in mind. What was he after? The Project Helix files, Vivian suggested, naming Meridian's most sensitive current development. They'd be invaluable to a competitor. Or he's trying to alter financial records, Robert added. Cover his tracks. Both are possible, I agreed. Patrick, make sure IT preserves logs of all access attempts and implement air-gap protocols for our most sensitive projects. Offline backups, no network access. Diana's phone rang, her associate Tom with an update on Ethan's legal maneuvers. The injunction hearing is scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow before Judge Eleanor Hamilton. A flicker of hope. Judge Hamilton was known for her thoroughness and impartiality. She wouldn't be swayed by emotional appeals or media narratives. We'll be ready, Diana assured me. The documentation establishing your ownership position is unassailable, and we have preliminary findings from the forensic accountants that clearly indicate financial impropriety. My phone buzzed again, this time a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, putting it on speaker. Alexandra Reed. The voice was unfamiliar, male with a slight accent. Yes, who is this? My name is Victor Zhang. I believe we need to talk. The room fell silent. Victor Zhang, CEO of Nexus Dynamics, Meridian's chief competitor, the man Olivia had reported, seeing Ethan meet with repeatedly. Mr. Zhang, this is unexpected. I imagine so. I've been watching today's developments with great interest. Your husband has been enterprising in his approaches to me over the past few months. I'm aware you've had meetings. A soft chuckle. More than meetings, Mrs. Caldwell. Ethan has been offering Meridian's proprietary technology, specifically Project Helix, in exchange for a leadership position at Nexus and significant equity compensation. The boldness of Zhang's admission was startling. That would be corporate espionage, Mr. Zhang, a federal offense. Indeed, which is why I declined his offers. Nexus competes aggressively but ethically, Mrs. Caldwell. I have no interest in stolen intellectual property or executives who betray their fiduciary duties. Then why are you calling me now? Because Ethan contacted me again 30 minutes ago, after his television appearance. He's desperate now, offering complete access to Meridian's research database in exchange for immediate financial support and a position at Nexus. I thought you should know. My mind raced, evaluating Zhang's motivations. Was this a genuine ethical concern from a competitor? A strategic move to undermine Ethan? Or something more complex? I appreciate the information, Mr. Zhang. May I ask why you're really calling? I pause, then a soft laugh. Perceptive. Very well. While I have no interest in stolen technology, I do have interest in a potential legitimate collaboration with Meridian, specifically in Asian markets where our strengths could be complementary, rather than competitive. I've attempted to broach this with Ethan several times, but he was fixated on more problematic arrangements. And you see today's leadership change as an opportunity to revisit legitimate collaboration? Precisely. Perhaps we could meet next week, once your current situation stabilizes. I'll be in Boston until Friday. I'll consider it, Mr. Zhang. In the meantime, if Ethan contacts you again with offers of Meridian's intellectual property, I'd appreciate being informed. Of course. And Mrs. Caldwell? If I were you, I'd be particularly vigilant about your personal and home security. Ethan struck me as a man unaccustomed to losing and increasingly unhinged in his desperation. The call ended, leaving us in stunned silence. Well, Diana said finally. That was unexpected. Is Zhang trustworthy? Robert asked. Irrelevant, I replied. Whether his motives are ethical or strategic, the information is valuable and easily verified. Patrick, have IT check for any unauthorized access attempts specifically targeting Project Helix data. Patrick nodded and stepped out to relay the instructions. If Zhang is telling the truth about Ethan offering Meridian's technology, Vivian observed, that's not just grounds for termination, that's potential criminal charges. Which explains his increasingly desperate moves, I agreed. He's not just fighting for his position or reputation anymore. He's trying to avoid legal consequences. My phone buzzed with another text from Ethan. I'm at the penthouse. Last chance. To talk before things get really unpleasant. The threat was thinly veiled, but I felt oddly calm. Ethan was following his standard playbook. Intimidation, then negotiation from a position of perceived strength. But for the first time in our relationship, I held the actual power. He's at the penthouse, I informed the group, demanding a meeting. Absolutely not, Diana said immediately. It's not safe, and anything said could be manipulated or recorded. I agree, Patrick added, returning to the conference room. Security protocols at your residence may have been compromised. We should assume Mr. Caldwell has access despite the lock changes. I nodded, unsurprised. I wasn't planning to meet him, but this might give us an opportunity. Patrick, can you send a security team to document his unauthorized presence at the penthouse? It could be useful for both the divorce proceedings and potential criminal charges. Already dispatching a team. They'll maintain surveillance but not engage unless necessary. Robert checked his watch. It's nearly 7. The markets are closed, but we need to prepare for tomorrow. The investor briefings, the injunction hearing, potential media fallout from Ethan's interview. And we need to secure any evidence of his attempts to sell Meridian's technology to Nexus, Diana added. That could change everything legally. Just then, Patrick's phone signaled an alert. He checked the message, his expression darkening. Mrs. Caldwell, we have a situation. Security cameras at your penthouse show Mr. Caldwell removing items, artwork, electronics, documents. It appears he's loading them into his car. Document everything, I instructed, but don't confront him yet. Let's see exactly what he takes. There's more, Patrick continued. The cameras briefly caught him attempting to access your home office safe. My pulse quickened. The safe contained personal documents, my grandmother's will that had established my trust fund, the original Meridian ownership papers, family jewelry, and other irreplaceable items. Did he succeed? Unknown. The camera angle doesn't show the safe directly, only his movements in that area of the office. Diana touched my arm gently. Alexandra, this changes things. If he's taking documents that could be relevant to either the divorce or Meridian's governance, we need to stop him immediately. I considered our options. Confronting Ethan directly would be emotionally satisfying but strategically risky. Involving the police might seem excessive given that the penthouse was still legally our shared residence, despite the divorce filing. Patrick, have your team continue documenting everything. If he attempts to leave with items from my home office or safe, have them intercept him, professionally, with witnesses present. emphasize that they're securing potentially relevant legal documents pending court determination, not preventing him from accessing his personal belongings. As Patrick relayed these instructions, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from one of the security officers at the penthouse. "Mrs. Caldwell, we have a problem. Mr. Caldwell has removed what appears to be documents from your office safe. He's also behaving erratically." "Erratically how?" "He appears intoxicated, ma'am. He's making threats, talking to himself, throwing items. We're maintaining visual surveillance but haven't engaged as per instructions." I exchanged glances with Diana, whose expression had hardened. "This changes our approach," she said. "An intoxicated, emotionally volatile individual removing legal documents and destroying property. We have grounds for immediate intervention." "Agreed," I said to both Diana and the security officer. "Document the situation, then intervene. To secure the documents only. Be professional but firm. And have medical personnel on standby in case his condition deteriorates." As I ended the call, Diana was already on her phone coordinating with her legal team. "We'll file for an emergency restraining order based on this incident," she informed me. "Between this and the Jung information, the narrative is shifting. Rapidly." Robert looked grim. "Ethan's counterstrike is backfiring. Instead of regaining control, he's creating more evidence against himself." "That's what happens when desperation replaces strategy," I observed. "Ethan has always been brilliant at offense but poor at defense. He doesn't know how to lose gracefully or how to retreat strategically." My phone signaled another update from the penthouse security team. Mr. Caldwell became confrontational when approached about the documents. "Police have been called due to escalating behavior. He is currently secured in the lobby. Documents recovered include what appear to be Meridian financial records and original ownership certificates." "He was trying to destroy the evidence of your ownership," Vivian concluded. "Literally erase the paper trail. And likely destroy evidence of his financial misconduct as well," Diana added. "This is no longer just a corporate governance issue, or even a contentious divorce. Ethan's actions are moving into criminal territory." As we processed this latest development, Patrick received another alert from Meridian's IT security team. "Mrs. Caldwell, they've traced the server access attempts. They're coming from a laptop registered to Olivia Palmer." For a moment, confusion reigned. Had Olivia betrayed us? Was her cooperation a ruse? Then understanding dawned. Ethan still has access to her credentials, I realized. He's using them to attempt to access the system, probably hoping to frame her if discovered. "That tracks with his character," Diana agreed. "Using others as shields or scapegoats." I immediately texted Olivia. "Your Meridian credentials are being used right now to attempt unauthorized system access. Are you aware of this?" Her response came seconds later. "No, my laptop is missing from my apartment. I thought I misplaced it. Has Ethan been here?" Patrick was already moving. "I'll send additional security to Ms. Palmer's residence immediately. If Mr. Caldwell accessed her apartment without authorization, that's breaking and entering. The pieces were falling into place. Ethan's increasingly desperate moves, his willingness to cross legal and ethical boundaries, his inability to accept that he had lost control of both Meridian and the narrative he'd constructed about himself. We need to consolidate all this evidence, Diana instructed her team. The penthouse incident, the unauthorized access attempts using Olivia's credentials, Zhang's testimony about the attempted technology sale. Together, they paint a picture of an executive spiraling out of control, willing to commit multiple crimes to maintain his position and revenge. The conference room had become a command center, with security updates, legal strategies, and crisis management all happening simultaneously. Through it all, I maintained a strange calm, the calm that comes from knowing your opponent has overplayed his hand. My phone buzzed with a final message from Ethan, sent from the back of a police car. According to the penthouse security team, you'll regret this, all of it. But I didn't regret any of it. not my decision to reveal my ownership of Meridian, not my alliance with Olivia, not my refusal to meet Ethan's demands or be intimidated by his threats. For the first time in years, I was acting with complete authenticity, standing firmly in my power rather than diminishing myself to accommodate Ethan's ego. As Diana had said hours earlier, this wasn't over. But now the end was in sight, and it wouldn't be the conclusion Ethan had planned when he brought his pregnant mistress to our anniversary dinner, wearing the emerald necklace meant for me. 3 months later, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office, watching Boston's skyline shimmer in the early morning light. So much had changed since that fateful anniversary dinner, both for me personally and for Meridian Technologies. The headline in the Wall Street Journal on my desk told part of the story. Former Meridian CEO Ethan Caldwell pleads guilty to embezzlement. Corporate espionage. The article detailed the terms of his plea agreement: 5 years in federal prison, complete restitution of the embezzled funds, and permanent disbarment from serving as an officer or director of any public company. What the article didn't capture was the spectacular implosion of Ethan's carefully constructed image. His desperate attempts to maintain control, the media campaign, the legal challenges, the unauthorized access attempts, had only accelerated. His downfall, creating additional evidence that the prosecutors used to build an airtight case against him. The emergency injunction hearing had been particularly devastating. Judge Hamilton, unswayed by Ethan's emotional appeals, had methodically reviewed the ownership documentation and the preliminary findings of financial misconduct. Her ruling had been unequivocal. My position as majority shareholder was valid. The board's actions were appropriate, and Ethan's suspension would remain in place pending full investigation. That investigation had quickly expanded beyond corporate governance into criminal territory, especially after Victor Zhang provided authorities with records of Ethan's attempts to sell Meridian's proprietary technology. The FBI had executed search warrants on Ethan's temporary residence, Caldwell Innovations' virtual office, and several storage units he had rented under false names, uncovering damning evidence of systematic fraud, attempted corporate espionage, and even witness intimidation. Olivia had been crucial to the case, providing detailed testimony about Ethan's financial manipulations and his increasingly erratic behavior as his plans unraveled. Her cooperation had been rewarded with immunity from any potential accessory charges, continued employment at Meridian in a new capacity, and the trust fund I had promised for her child, Ethan's daughter, born just 2 weeks ago. My divorce from Ethan had been finalized last month, astonishingly simple once the criminal charges eliminated any leverage he might have had in negotiations. There had been no drawn-out battles over assets or property, just a clean severing of legal ties to a man I now recognized had been manipulating me for our entire relationship. Meridian had not just survived the transition, it had thrived. Vivian, Russell's appointment as permanent CEO had been unanimously approved by the board after a 3-month interim period demonstrated her exceptional leadership skills. Under her direction, the company had refocused on ethical governance, transparent financial practices, and innovative technology development. Most surprisingly, the exploratory discussions with Victor Zhang had evolved into a formal joint venture agreement, allowing Meridian and Nexus to collaborate in Asian markets rather than engage in destructive competition. The partnership, announced last week, had sent Meridian's stock to record highs. A knock at my door interrupted my reflections. Diana entered, elegant as always in a tailored suit, a thick folder under her arm. "It's done," she announced, placing the folder on my desk. The Reed Foundation Incorporation papers, completely finalized. As of 9 a.m. this morning, you are officially the chairwoman of a $50 million philanthropic foundation focused on supporting women in STEM and corporate governance. Reform? I smiled, a genuine expression that felt increasingly natural these days. The foundation represented my vision for the future, using a portion of my Meridian holdings to create opportunities for women who, unlike me, might not have had the financial resources to pursue their ambitions but possessed the same drive and intelligence. Thank you, Diana, for everything. She waved off my gratitude. I should be thanking you. The Caldwell case has become required reading at Harvard Law for corporate governance and white-collar crime courses. My firm has received dozens of new clients as a result. A mutually beneficial arrangement, then, she smiled. The best kind. Her expression softened slightly. Are you attending the sentencing tomorrow? I considered the question. Ethan's formal sentencing was scheduled for the following morning, likely his last public appearance before beginning his prison term. No, I decided. I've said everything I needed to say through my victim impact statement. Being there in person would only feed the media narrative of personal vendetta rather than corporate and criminal justice. Diana nodded approvingly. Wise choice. Speaking of media narratives, have you seen this? She handed me a magazine, the latest issue of Boston Business, featuring a cover photo of me with the headline, The Power Behind the Throne, Alexandra. Reid reveals how she built Boston's tech giant from the shadows. I laughed softly. Hardly from the shadows. I was hiding in plain sight for 12 years, wearing designer dresses and hosting dinner parties while Ethan took center stage. And now? Now I'm exactly where I should be, visible, engaged, using my position and resources to create meaningful change. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. My mentoring session with Olivia was scheduled to begin in 10 minutes. Part of our arrangement had included professional development for her, helping her build the financial and leadership skills she would need as a single mother establishing her own career path. I should go, Diana said, noting my glance at the phone. The joint venture contract reviews are on your desk when you're ready. After she left, I returned to the window, watching the city awaken fully to the new day. In just 3 months, I had reclaimed not just Meridian but myself, shedding the practiced smile and supportive posture of Ethan's wife to stand firmly as Alexandra Reid, businesswoman, investor, and now philanthropist. I thought back to that anniversary dinner, to the shock of seeing Olivia with her swollen belly and my emerald necklace. At the time, it had seemed like the end of my world, a calculated humiliation designed to devastate me while Ethan walked away with everything. Instead, it had become the catalyst for my liberation. By bringing his pregnant mistress to our anniversary dinner, Ethan had inadvertently set in motion the chain of events that would reveal his true character, expose his criminal behavior, and ultimately free me from the constraints of a marriage built on manipulation and lies. The emerald necklace now belonged to Olivia's infant daughter, placed in the trust fund I had established for her future, a reminder that sometimes the most painful beginnings can lead to unexpected new chapters. As I gathered my materials for my meeting with Olivia, I felt a sense of completion, of having come full circle. The woman who had sat frozen in shock at Elysium 3 months ago, watching her husband introduce his pregnant mistress, now moved with purposeful confidence, her path forward clearer than it had ever been during 12 years of marriage. Ethan had brought his pregnant mistress to our anniversary dinner, intending it as the final act in his orchestrated exit from our marriage. Instead, it had become the opening scene in a drama that ended with me revealing I owned his company, and ultimately reclaiming my power, my purpose, and myself. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.